Hey, so it's me again. Now I have a box of tissues because my runny nose is getting messier, and also I'm like sneezing and there's snot, so there's that. But I basically wanted to have like a bit of a, it's not even like a follow-up video, it's just something that has been on my mind lately, and I think that there is a lot to explore. But basically, what I talk about is like those feelings of of protectiveness, like you kind of like protecting people, and kind of like the transition, because basically lately I've been observing that I went from being kind of like, for example, protected by my parents to kind of like being protective over them, and I mean, like, there's like the physical element of protecting people from harm, but that is usually not, at least in my living, it's not the one that's kind of like the biggest, because I don't know, I think that all things considered, I have a really safe life. I don't think, I cannot think of the last time that I have been in physical peril. I don't know if I've ever been in physical peril. I mean, that's not really incited by me. So I was thinking about this. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I don't know if this has to do with my friend who passed away, and that got me thinking about this. But I find that with like every new day, I feel this feeling like towards my parents. And as I said, like not just like physical peril, but like emotional damage. Pretty much, these situations they come and go. So for example, my dad, sometimes he will share some stories that to me they're really sad, but usually he tells them, I think it's a very normal thing, people telling very tragic stories with kind of like a smile on their faces, just thinking like, look at this crazy thing that happened, and I feel this sense of like I want to find this teacher or this person who did this thing or said this thing, and it's not really necessarily like a new one, but I've been kind of like sensing that I've been shifting in terms of that. I've been kind of like going from being kind of like the one being protected, and also like there's an interesting fact about this, because that trauma that I had from when I was 13, like that pretty much led to a kind of like me having this feeling that I had nobody who I can count on. There's nobody I can rely on. So I became very independent very quickly. My parents have always like valued, like independence, and they've always like taught me to kind of like do things for myself, which I'm very grateful for, because it means that I can kind of like look after myself, even before I became an adult. I think that I was maybe more readier to become an adult than some other people my age because of that. I mean, I think my high school experience also kind of like helped, because I went to this school that was very, they kind of like also valued autonomy a lot. So some of like the freedom that you only get, in college, I was already having when I was a teenager. So I think that really changed me, and it didn't really help, because I remember, for example, when I was a teenager, I would do like everything I had to do by myself, so if I had to like go to a consultation, to have an exam, I would just do it on my own. And it's not that I can't do those things on my own right now, but for example, with the health example, I usually bring my mom along, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that usually is a very good contributor, because there are things that I can say because I'm experiencing them, but there are things that you can only see from the outside. So I really appreciate like the perspective that she brings to kind of like my life. But as I said, I'm kind of like getting to this point where I think, because I went from like being super independent to kind of like to when I started working on my trauma, like I started to kind of like rely on my parents more. I feel that there was like this kind of like making up for all the years that I was kind of like doing things by myself, like I was alone and I was pushing everybody away. So I kind of like I went from being completely independent to being very dependent on them, and right now I think I'm getting to the other side where I'm back to being independent, and also I'm getting to a point where like I'm like, okay, I have to kind of like look after them, which is kind of like the tendency, like it's your parents, they take care of you when you're a kid, and then when they get older you take care of them. It's kind of like the cycle, and I kind of like I'm at a point where I kind of like I want to live a long life, which means that I will kind of like see my parents which is kind of like crazy, like, you know, seeing them grow weaker. Not trying to say insult them or anything, it's just that that's kind of like what happens when you get older. Your body gets more frail. Although I will say that, for example, my mom's side, my grandma and my grandpa as well, like they very much value their independence. So, you know, I think that my mom, for example, is going to be very much like that. I also think that my dad is going to be like that as well. So, you know, like they're not going to be they're kind of like want to kind of like take care of their own affairs, but still there's room for me to help and for me to kind of like be a positive presence in their life, their lives. So yeah, I really hope that I can kind of like step up, you know, to, you know, like this challenge, because as I said, for so long I wasn't really, you know, thinking ahead. I didn't really think I would make it, you know, to, you know, a point where, you know, I thought that basically my parents were going to bury me. And oh, maybe that's why I started thinking, you know, like this lately. It was kind of like this element of, you know, seeing my friend, you know, seeing her parents bury her. That is not like the natural order of things, and that is kind of like a heavy thing to kind of like sprinkle on someone. So yeah, so right now that I'm planning on living a long life, I'm, you know, I'm starting to think, I'm kind of like considering that, like, oh yeah, they are going to pass away sooner than me. It's interesting because, like, when I was younger, I really felt that, you know, like, if they pass away, like, I don't know what I would do with myself. But right now, I'm starting to get to a point where I'm like, yeah, I'll survive. You know, like, they're going to be gone, and it's going to suck. It's going to be really bad for me, but I will survive. You know, like, I'll make it to the other side, and that's possible, you know. But yeah, but still, like, if I'm thinking about like them dying today, I would be so lost, you know, to be completely honest. Like, that would really shake me to my core. And I think that's normal, you know. It's a sign that we have this bond, this connection, and I'm really grateful that, you know, like, I'm so close to my parents. I know lots of people, they are not blessed with, you know, as great parents as mine were. There's a lot of pain, a lot of resentment, and I, you know, like, if that's you, like, I'm not going to be the one that's going to say, like, oh, you have to go to your parents, because, like, sometimes it's better for you to just, you know, cut contact with people, go no contact. And that is kind of like, I think each situation, it should be assessed individually, basically. And life finds a way. I don't think there's any, like, higher force that's kind of like higher power that is kind of like doing anything. But I do think that, you know, like, time really heals a lot of wounds. I mean, and some they don't. Sometimes, you know, like, times they don't really improve on that. And I think the part of it has to do with, like, the wound, because depending on what the wound is, I think some things they can be, some things are unforgivable. That's what I'm going to say. So there are some things that, you know, like, I for example, can't forgive. And but, like, usually, like, a lot of these things, they have to do with my own personal experience. So when I think about the worst thing that's ever happened to me, you know, I go to that trauma of, you know, like, when I was 13. Like, if there is somebody, when I see somebody who does the same thing to somebody else, I can't forgive them, you know, like, even if the person kind of like does, I can't. And I don't think that this is changing anytime soon. But I will say, I don't have any resentment. I think that, you know, the no contact thing might be kind of like the way to go. But yeah, but back to the thing of, like, feeling protective over people. I think that sometimes I have these fantasies where I don't know why I want to be kind of like the protector, and I feel like in you know, like, situations, things happen that allow me to kind of like fulfill that role. And this gets me thinking, like, why exactly I'm just not looking for attachment or, you know, whatever. So, like, why exactly do those fantasies, they come up? You know, like, what exactly am I trying to kind of like accomplish here? What exactly is, you know, at stake? And basically, I think that has to do with not my ego, you know, necessarily, but it has to do with, like, my sense of self. I want, you know, even if I'm kind of like, I'm not the most sociable person, I think that I want to be relied on. I think that feeling that you get when people rely on you, it is something that it really strengthens my notion of strength, you know. So if I want to be a strong person, like, that is a way for me to demonstrate strength, and that is a way for me to yeah, that's a way for me to kind of like, for me to see myself that way, for me to see myself as strong. So what I'm getting to is that basically, like, it might, depending on like how it's happening, it might not be, you know, like the best for me. It might not be the ideal, you know. It might not be kind of like how I shouldn't necessarily crave this, but I do think that there is something that is not really intentional about, you know, like these fantasies. I think that, yeah, so like you just have to like, just when you take a deeper look, yeah, so I basically have to like look deeper into myself to see why exactly is that I'm having this fantasy and what can I do about it. Because sometimes, you know, like there's nothing to be done, you know. Sometimes it's fine for you to have a certain fantasy, but sometimes like that kind of like drags you down, you know. It really gets in the way of like you living your best life, because you're caught up in this fantasy of who you want to be, you know, and who you could be. And that is not really the reality that you have. Because as I said, I'm feeling these feelings of protectiveness, but what exactly am I doing to, you know, do this? And also like sometimes it is the way that I'm like out here trying to you know, protect somebody, like it is not really healthy. A lot of them involve violence, and that's not really I don't think anybody would be happy, you know. I'm thinking of two particular situations, two particular things that happened to my dad, that, you know, I feel like if I ever met the people, man, like I would just break a chair, you know, against them. I would just, you know, and that is not great, because that would be a crime. So, you know, I have to find a better way of, you know, kind of like taking care of them, of, you know, like of looking after them. And I mean, there are a lot of ways that you can go about something. Maybe this is something I should bring to therapy. This is definitely something I'm gonna bring to therapy, to be completely honest. I think that I have a lot more, you know, to say, because as I said, a lot of like these feelings, they coincide with with kind of like me not necessarily having the best, you know, vision of myself, you know, feeling, you know, I think first of all, like there's nothing wrong with feeling protective over people. In fact, that is kind of like a way to show that you care. And I care, you know, I care about my parents, I care about their well-being, I care about like them being happy and healthy. And so basically, you know, I should try to focus on that. Like, how can I make them, you know, happier? How can I help? You know, in which way can I, for example, lift the burden of, you know, from of the shoulders, you know, like lift whatever it is kind of like tormenting them. And it is one of those things that there is no right or wrong answer, because also like things, it depends, you know, like there are different times, and because their needs are different, you know, like what they need today might not be what they need tomorrow. So I have to kind of like adapt to what, you know, works, what, you know, like they need. And sometimes it doesn't have to be something like monumental. It can be just like for example, like doing a chore, that would be kind of like something that they would do, so like I do it for them, and as a consequence, like I'm just making their life easier, you know. So it doesn't have to be, as I said, it doesn't have to be something huge. It doesn't have to be kind of like settling of scores. It doesn't have to be particularly because like I don't think my parents want me to choose violence, you know, in any of those situations. So kind of like if I did do that, I would only add to their chagrin, you know. So I would only I would kind of like take away their peace. So, you know, sometimes, and also, you know, sometimes like you taking care of yourself is in itself kind of like a gift, because once again you're removing a burden, but also you know, like, yeah, because I think that they probably worry about like how exactly am I gonna fare when they're gone, you know. And I mean, hopefully like we have some 30 years, you know, more at least, you know. So I mean, I don't know, but there's still like a long time, you know, for them, unless, you know, something happens. For example, my grandpa, my dad's dad, he died at 68. My dad is 62. So, you know, part of me is like, oh my god, is there something's going to happen? Because I am not ready, you know, to lose my dad, you know. Like, I know 6 years, it can kind of like fly by. So yeah, so anyway, so that is kind of like something that sometimes like it occupies my thoughts, you know, with just thinking that like, what if he also has, you know, a heart condition. You know, I think that my grandpa had a stroke, and yeah, oh, I'm gonna sneeze. So I think he had a stroke, and then he, you know, he died. but he didn't die. He would be in a vegetative state. So in my I don't know. I think everybody was like, yeah, it's better for him to go and be at peace than having to live their life as a vegetable. But yeah, so basically, oh yeah, so I was talking about how sometimes like taking care of yourself, it can be also a gift to your parents, but at least it is for my part, because for so long I have kind of not taking care of myself. I was being very reckless with the way that I lived my life, and that is something that added to their worries. So like right now, with me taking care of myself, with me kind of like not being reckless, I can kind of like I'm giving back to them. Uh, so yeah, I mean, this does sound selfish. Like, how am I going to, help my parents? I'm gonna get my shit together. So it's not just that, but I've kind of like observed that basically, whenever whenever I kind of like I'm doing well, my parents are also they're happy about that. They feel happy that I'm doing well. So yeah, I think that for so long I didn't really care about myself and about my well-being, and that was something that, as I said, added to their concerns, and that was something that like there's more. So now that I'm like taking care, I think like they feel like they have to worry less about me, and that is as I said, like one less concern for them to have. I don't know what I was saying. I think this is starting to get to my brain. I'm feeling kind of like a pressure here, and it's not. I don't have a headache as per se, but like there's this pressure. Uh, but yeah, so kind of like back to the whole protectiveness thing. I think that is a very natural, reaction for you to have over the people that you love. It shows that you care about them, you care about them, their well-being. So it's good I'm feeling these feelings, because it means that I transitioned from being kind of like involved in myself and like not really caring and just focusing on myself alone because I couldn't really care about anything or anyone else, to like this point where I can care about multiple things, and it means that I'm kind of like healthy and happy. So that's kind of like that. But life has been good for me, good to me, and I am kind of like foreseeing like things getting better by the day. Trials and tribulations are still going to come. I still have to handle them, but uh, yeah, they're still going to come. But I think I'm better equipped to handle them, and I think this is something that I think it just also puts my parents at ease, because I have made choices before in the past that were not healthy, and they were not sustainable. So it's good that I'm like at this point where I can start looking outwardly, because as I said, I was looking outwardly in a very unhealthy way, and then I started looking internally at myself, and now I'm back to looking outwardly as well. I'm looking both sides. I'm looking inside and I'm looking outside, and that is kind of like how things should be. Like you should not isolate yourself from the world, although I understand why I did that, and it's something that I would do again, because it was very important for me to kind of like get to this point where I could kind of like get to the bottom of why things bothered me, kind of like realize why it was at stake, what was at stake, and why I wanted to keep living, because I didn't want to keep living. So it took like a journey for me to get to a point where I was like, yeah, what do I have? What do I want to live for? And there's no right or wrong answer. I think you just have to find the things that ground you, your anchors. And I think I have found them. I have a lot of like different things, because also like it's not good for you to just have one anchor, because like if that breaks, then you're kind of like on your own and there's nothing there for you. So right now there's several things that I want to do. There are many things that I want to yeah, I have concerns, I have worries, but it's kind of good that among those worries are, for example, my parents, or my brother, just people that I care about. It shows that I care. It shows that I'm mature enough to like think about not just myself, because when I was looking internally, that's pretty much what was happening. And once again, like it was necessary for me to have this, for me to be able to transition to kind of like a better like mindset, a normal, regular mindset, a stable mindset. Yeah, so I think this is it. I'm I'm feeling protective over the people I love, and it's an interesting transition, as I said, from like me kind of like being protected to me being the protector. And naturally, like as I said, like my family is very independent. They like to do their own thing, which is pretty great. Which I think it makes it easier for me to interact with them, because I'm basically like I don't have to, and it's gonna sound selfish, but like I don't have to, care for them, as I would if, yeah, if like things were different. Naturally, as I said, I am, I know that in the future, like, moving forward, like my parents, they're both very healthy, very happy. I'll have more opportunities to take care of them, basically. That is kind of like where I am at. That is where I'm at, and I'm kind of like ready. And I think that I might be ready for those responsibilities, because, the whole protection thing is not just defending people physically, like it's not just, like hitting somebody, to kind of like get even. It has a lot of, like small things on a daily basis, like taking them, for example, for a consultation, doing a chore, for them, helping them with, something they're trying to do. Like those are the things that you can do. There's a way for you to protect, your people, protect your loved ones. And yeah, so I think there's that. So anyways, bye.